For 9 years, one man flew a ghost. A plane that didn't exist. A name that wasn't his. 9 years, 5 identities, 1 secret, until someone got close enough to see it. The ground was always coming. This is how it ends. He never made the call, because the paperwork looked perfect. It was supposed to. This man had spent 9 years making sure of it, rebuilding a dead aircraft's identity with the same precision he once used rebuilding its engine. And on this particular Tuesday, that precision buys him one more flight, one more fuel stop, one more clean exit. So how does someone fly the exact same stolen aircraft past federal inspectors, airport authorities, and fellow pilots for nearly a year without a single one of them pulling the thread that would have unraveled everything? And what finally puts him on the ground for good 8 months after this exact moment? Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly how a plane can be hidden in plain sight and why the one mistake that grounded him wasn't even about the plane at all. Rewind to 2010. A 39-year-old licensed commercial pilot loses his job flying charter routes when the company folds during a fraud investigation that had nothing to do with him. He has 4,000 flight hours, a mortgage he can't pay, and a mechanic's understanding of aircraft that goes deeper than most pilots ever bother to learn. He grew up around aircraft, taking engines apart before he could drive. Flying was the one thing he was ever truly good at, and losing it left something unresolved. That summer, he takes on maintenance work at a small regional airport. More grass runway than pavement. More retired aircraft than working ones. One of the planes on the lot is a 1979 Cessna 208 Caraver, de-reddifed, abandoned by an owner who died without heirs, sitting in a back hangar collecting dust while the estate drags through probate. Nobody has flown it in 3 years. Nobody is checking on it. Reyes starts doing small jobs on it after hours, telling himself he's just keeping his hands busy. He is not being honest with himself yet. Here's the piece most people don't understand about general aviation in the United States. The system runs almost entirely on trust. There are more than 200,000 registered aircraft in the country, and a fraction of the inspectors needed to physically verify all of them. Registration renewal is done largely by mail and self-report. A tail number, painted correctly, matched to a plausible logbook, is treated as proof of identity, the same way a license plate is. Nobody assumes the plate is fake. Reyes understood this system from the inside because he'd spent a decade filling out its paperwork legitimately. He knew exactly which boxes actually got checked and which ones never did. By early 2011, Reyes has quietly restored the Caravan to flying condition, using parts scavenged from 2 other derelicted aircraft on the same lot. The engine, the avionics, the hydraulics, all rebuilt by hand over 4 months of night work. What he doesn't have is a legal identity for the plane, so he builds one. He finds a matching aircraft written off in a storm years earlier, its registration lapsed, its wreckage long since scrapped. He orders a duplicate identification plate, the small metal tag that lists an aircraft's serial number, and has it fabricated by a machine shop that asks no questions. Because plenty of legitimate restoration projects need exactly that service. He rivets it over the original. On paper, in the FAA's eyes, a scrapped plane in Louisiana has just come back to life 2 states away. The first flight happens in April 2011 at 4 in the morning, off a runway with no tower. Reyes takes the Caravan up for 11 minutes, lands, and sits in the cockpit for a long time afterward, not moving. He had a flying aircraft with a fake identity, and now he had to decide what a stolen plane with a false paper tack was actually for. The answer turns out to be cargo. Not drugs, not anything glamorous. Reyes starts flying small, degradable freight jobs for exporters who move engine parts, agricultural equipment, and consumer electronics between airstraps in Florida, the Bahamas, and small islands in the Caribbean, where customs enforcement is thin and cash is preferred. It's the kind of work that exists in a gray zone, technically requiring manifests and permits that almost nobody actually files for cargo this small, and even more rarely gets audited when it doesn't line up. He charges roughly 40% less than legitimate charter operators because he has no overhead, no lease payments, no legal aircraft to insure, no fuel contracts negotiated through a company that could be traced. Within a year, he has 4 regular clients and a reputation, under an assumed operating name, for being reliable, fast, and asking no questions. Word travels quietly in that world, the same way it does in any industry, running on trust rather than paperwork. By 2013, he's turning away work. What makes this sustainable for 9 years, and this is the part that separates Reyes from almost every other story on this channel, is that he never gets greedy in a way that would draw attention. He doesn't buy a second plane. He doesn't scale up to bigger cargo or bigger risk. He keeps the operation exactly the size it needs to be to cover his costs and pay himself a modest, boring, unremarkable income, roughly what a mid-level charter pilot would legally make. Investigators later note this as the single hardest part of the case to build. There was no lavish spending trail, no unexplained wealth, nothing that would normally flag a federal financial crimes unit. Reyes wasn't running a criminal empire. He was quietly living inside one plane's worth of a lie, and living inside it modestly. For 9 years, this is the rhythm. Reyes flies the Caravan roughly 3 times a week, an average of 150 flight hours a year, landing on more than 60 different air trips across 4 states and a dozen island notions. He never files a flight plan he doesn't have to. He pays cash for fuel wherever cash is accepted. He keeps 2 separate logbooks, one real, hidden, tracking actual maintenance, and one cosmetic, showing a clean and boring service history that matches the fake identity. Every 18 months, he repaints the tail number slightly. Rotating between 3 different registrations, he has built the same way, so that no single fake identity accumulates too many hours or too much attention at any one airport. But rotating identities isn't just about avoiding suspicion. It's mathematics. Every time a tail number logs enough hours at the same airport, the odds of someone cross-checking it against a registry climb. Reyes treats this like a formula, not a feeling. He caps any single fake identity at roughly 400 flight hours before retiring it and repainting the plane under the next one, using the same fabrication method he perfected on the first data plate. Find a real aircraft of matching make and model that was legitimately destroyed, confirm its registration has fully lapsed, and let the Caravan borrow its identity for a while. Over 9 years, he cycles through what investigators later count as 5 separate false identities, each one a genuine deregistrated aircraft from a different state, each one chosen because nobody was left to notice the wreck it belonged to had a second life in the sky. The near masses start early, and this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because almost none of them are close calls in the dramatic sense. They're small, boring, human moments where someone had every reason to catch him and simply didn't. The near misses start early and never really stop. In 2013, a mechanic at a regional airport notices that the rivet pattern around the identification plate doesn't match factory spec, a detail that would take most inspectors years of hands-on work to even recognize as wrong. He mentions it to the pilot, who laughs it off as damage from a prior repair and offers to buy the man a drink. In 2016, a fellow charter pilot who trained at the same flight school as Reyes years ago recognizes his face at a fuel counter in the Turks and Caicos and asks, almost in passing, why he heard Reyes lost his certificate back in 2010. Here's what should actually shock you about all 4 of those moments. Not one of them required more than a 5-minute phone call to unravel. A pilot certificate database link. A registry cross-reference. A single follow-up question. Every single person who came close to catching Daniel Reyes had the tool to do it, sitting in their pocket or on their desk, and every single one of them decided, in the moment, that it wasn't worth the friction. That's not a story about one man's genius. That's a story about how much of the world runs on nobody wanting to be the person who makes things awkward. Each time, the system's own weak points, the assumption of good faith, the understaffing, the sheer boredom of routine verification save him. He starts to believe the plane is simply unfindable. This is exactly the moment competent people start making mistakes. Shoulders language collapses Mistedi. Because here's the part of the operation Reyes never rebuilt as carefully as the aircraft: himself. Flying under an assumed identity for cargo clients means never fully disappearing from human relationships. He needs mechanics who trust him, fuel vendors who extend him credit, small airport staff who wave him through on a first-name basis. Somewhere in 9 years of needing people, one relationship goes wrong in a way no forged data plate can fix. Her name, in court documents, is listed only as a cooperating witness. She was Reyes' girlfriend for the final 3 years of the operation, a woman who worked ground logistics for one of his cargo clients and who, by her own later testimony, believed for a long time that his work was simply unconventional, not illegal. She confronted him. He told her everything. The derelict caravan, the fabricated data plate, 9 years of a plane that legally didn't exist. He believed telling her the truth would bring them closer. It did the opposite. Within 4 months, the relationship had collapsed under an accumulation of smaller betrayals that had nothing to do with the plane. But the plane was the thing she knew, and the plane was the thing she eventually decided to do something about. nobody was hurt. Nothing was smuggled that was itself illegal. What Reyes stole, in the end, was an identity, not a cargo. And the sentencing guidelines for stealing an aircraft's paperwork are lighter than almost anyone expects. He pleads guilty in the fall of 2020 and receives 18 months in federal custody and a lifetime revocation of his pilot's certificate. Investigators later estimate that Reyes flew the Caravan more than 1,300 hours across 9 years on 5 rotating false identities, covering an estimated distance equivalent to 17 full trips around the Earth, entirely on an aircraft that, according to every government record in the United States, had been destroyed in a hurricane in 2009. When investigators finally lay out the full timeline in court, even the federal prosecutor admits, on the record, that she has never seen a case where the fraud was this sustained and the actual harm was this hard to quantify.
Data plate verification mandication for aircraft exiting Renestay.
Somewhere in a federal aviation manual updated in 2022 is a clause that exists because one man in Opalipo figured out exactly how little anyone actually checks. Reyes served his sentence and was released in 2022. He cannot legally fly again. Not as a student, not as a passenger adjacent crew member, not in any capacity the FAA recognizes. Friends who stayed in touch say he still drives out to small regional airports on weekends, not to fly, just to stand at the fence and watch other people take off. In aircraft he could, without looking at a single document, tell you were built wrong or maintained badly. The Caravan itself was seized, its illegal data plate removed and logged into evidence, and after months of legal wrestling over an aircraft that officially did not exist anywhere in the United States, it was formally re-registered under its true identity and sold at federal auction to a flight school in Texas. As of this year, student pilots practice takeoffs and landings in the exact plane that flew under the radar for 9 years, completely unaware of what it once was, or who used to sit in that seat at 4 in the morning, deciding whether to become someone else. So here's the actual lesson underneath all of this. And it's the reason this story keeps coming up in aviation circles, even now. Reyes didn't beat the system with some brilliant, unbreakable piece of engineering. He beat it because the system assumes good faith by default, and because verification, real verification, costs money and time that almost nobody wants to spend on routine cases. That gap between what the paperwork claims and what anyone actually checks is the same gap that shows up in casinos, in banks, in pharmaceutical supply trains, in every story on this channel. Reyes just happened to find it in the sky. And the thing that finally closed that gap wasn't a smarter inspector or a sharper algorithm. It was a person he trusted, deciding she'd trusted him enough. Which raises the question worth sitting with before you go. How many systems are you trusting right now, today, purely because nobody's actually checked?